Passing and offense in general has been considerably down for 5 years in a row now. In 2020, 230 passing touchdowns through 4 weeks. This season, there has been 75 less than that, a dip of 33%. Just a quick example, Baker Mayfield, before Thursday Night Football, had 8 touchdowns. That is second best in the NFL. 2020, if you had 8 touchdowns through 4 games, that would be number 12. So the question is why? The main thing that everyone keeps bringing up is soft coverage, more conservative play. So just how true is that? I researched everything, broke it down, and tried to figure out all the different reasons why. So a quick breakdown of the 5 most common coverages in their standard form. Cover 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. For those 5, the number represents how many deep defenders there are. The talk has been about the 2 high safety looks, limiting those explosive plays. You got 2 deep safeties. That would be your cover 2 and your cover 4. Cover 4 is actually not the more conservative of those 2 coverages. It's cover 2. The reason, when a quarterback breaks the huddle, his first diagnosis is where are the safeties, and that tells him a ton. In cover 4, the corners and the safeties each have a quarter of the field deep, but the safeties are only about 10 yards off the ball, and their first role is run support compared to being a pass first safety. They are run support, not in the box, but still run first, then pass, making it a lot more viable to hit something deep or just farther down the field, and there's more holes in the defense in general because you have 4 deep defenders. So cover 4, run first safeties, corners, quarter of the field. Cover 2, the safeties are deeper, usually about 12, 13 yards, and they are pass first defenders. So they have half the field, and you got 5 underneath defenders. The corners starting in the flats, outside leverage. Then you got 3 guys, 2 in the hook to curl, and 1 in the middle of the field. People talk about Tampa 2. Cover 2, just an alternate version. That middle guy would be even deeper than dropping into that middle third of the field, making it even more conservative, stopping even more of those big plays, because that is one of the weaknesses in cover 2 is kind of that middle third of that field. So back in the day, you're playing Madden, defenses in cover 2, you just run 4 verts and you got 4 deep guys to their 2 deep defenders with a touchdown every time. It's amazing, it's easy. It's also the 2000s and 90s, whatever, football back in the day, it has evolved since then. So cover 2, most of the time, you're pattern matching receivers, matching whatever the offense is doing. So it's not just solely, I'm going to get in this zone and stay in this flat area no matter what. If no one is there, then I'll just have the day off and get to hang out. No. So you got your deep safety in the half of the field, and you got your corner in cover 2 covering the flat first. Say there's 2 receivers on that side, you got an outside receiver and a slot receiver. That corner is going to be outside leverage, watching the quarterback, and his eyes can kind of see that slot in his zone coverage. If that slot guy comes into his zone, he's picking him up. He runs a flat route, he runs whatever it is to that flat area, he's picking him up, that's his guy. Say he goes vertical though, or an in-breaker. Well, there's no one over there outside of his receiver. So he's going to match that receiver. If he stays in the flat, perfect, he'll stay with them. If he goes a little bit of in-breaker, yeah, he'll follow him, there's no one else going to be there. And if he goes deep, guess what he's doing? The safety's over top, he's just matching that outside receiver and also going deep. So if they both go vertical, then the corner is going to follow the other vertical. They'll always have those 2 deep defenders in most coverages. So now looking at the 1 high safety looks, you got cover 3 and cover 1, then you got cover 0, which is no one high. You're playing all man coverage and you're blitzing is what you're doing. Cover 1, 1 high safety, everyone else is in man coverage. Sometimes you have 1 middle of the field defender in the short area and then 1 deep guy, and then cover 3. Deep third of the field, deep third of the field, deep third of the field. You got 2 guys in the middle zone and 2 guys in the curl to then flat. Curl first, and then if no one there, then they get to the flat for those check down areas. The benefit, you only have 1 deep safety, meaning you have another guy in the box. It is better for run support. Better against the run, harder to run against when they're playing cover 1, cover 3, or cover 0. But the downside, more explosive plays, definitely against man coverage, especially, but even cover 3 allows more of those explosive plays. So when everyone's talking about like ruin 2 high safety that's destroying the NFL, you got to play 1 high safety only. They want the explosive plays, but let's look at who runs it the most. These are the top 10 teams in cover 3, cover 1, 1 high safety looks. You got the Browns, Steelers, Panthers, Giants, Broncos, Bengals, Rams, Texans, Seahawks, and Bears. What do we notice? Even outside of the numbers, if we just look at the team names, because a lot of these numbers, only 4 weeks in, some are better or worse than the numbers. But what I notice is it is about half the teams that are pretty horrible, and then the other half of the teams are really good. Why? A lot of this is man coverage. That cover one, even sometimes cover zero, but even cover three, more risky defending, is they have really good secondaries. We look at the Browns corners. We look at the Broncos corners. We look at the Bears corners. You got Stingley, you got the Seahawks, you got Steelers, Joey Porter Jr. A lot of these teams that run it a ton are really good at it and really successful, and they're allowed to do this because they have the better secondaries and they have better run support. And at the same time, it is not good when your DBs aren't good, which sounds stupid, but you get what I mean. The Rams, really bad corners right now, and they're running it a bunch. The Bengals, similar. The Panthers, similar. Giants, probably worse than 20th. But you get my point here. Running a lot of cover one and cover three when you don't have those dominant outside guys, it makes it a lot tougher. So it's not even that cover one is that much worse or cover three is that much worse, but you just have to have the right personnel and team to do it successfully. So the first video example, Washington is probably the worst secondary in the NFL right now. And they played the Bengals a couple weeks ago. You got T. Higgins on one outside, Jamar Chase on the other outside, and they decide that they're going to play cover one multiple times. You can probably guess where this is going. You have one deep safety, everyone else manned up. Joe Burrow, he already recognizes here what they're doing. He knows the blitz is coming. The ball's going to have to get out fast. He's fine with that. One deep safety. He's not going to be able to get over to Jamar Chase on this. So what does he do? He looks him off for half a second, comes back to Jamar Chase, one-on-one deep ball down the sideline. Easy money, and it's a touchdown. The bad part is this wasn't even the first time it happened in the game. Cover one, that safety comes down. They're just waiting for those tight ends and running backs to release. They run play action, a two-man route. It's just T. Higgins on the go on the right side, Jamar Chase on the bottom of the screen, go route. Joe Burrow just hits him down the sideline again. So there's one perfect defense to look at for this, and that's the Vikings. Not only is Brian Flores an amazing defensive coordinator, but he disguises better than anybody. They are first right now in EPA per play allowed in the pass, and they are running the most cover two in the NFL, which is also weird because Flores used to never run cover two. But those two high safety looks, what it also allows you to do is disguise a lot easier compared to one high safety looks. When you're running two high safeties, it doesn't automatically mean you're going to go cover 2 or 4 or 6 because you can rotate those safeties either at the snap or right before it into a cover 3 or a cover 1. That cover 1 robber look where one safety is kind of deep in the middle, one in the middle of the zone where that weakness of the cover 1 usually would be. So some quick examples of the film, Jordan Love and Brock Purdy kind of struggling. So a too high example, last year against the Saints, they start too high and at the snap, they rotate to that cover 3, cause confusion. Ian Book takes the sack. But when you're playing against a little bit better quarterback in Brock Purdy, that's where he steps it up. So here, they're kind of showing all-out pressure and this man-to-man coverage. So he knows he's going to have to get it out quick, go to his hot route, whatever it is. But what does Flores do? He drops 7 guys into a Tampa 2 look, and they rush 4. The confusion still gets home. That quick slant takes taken away. That deep middle linebacker drops and takes away that deep dig route, and Purdy goes down. A different look here against the 49ers still. They start off in a cover 3 look, showing 5-man blitz. Then Debo motions to the other side. This safety drops out, and they go into a quarters coverage. They still bring 5, so they only have the 2 backers there. They're going to take the middle of the field zone, meaning the flat is wide open. He could have this running back very easily. He just doesn't look to it. Very late, gets back to use check in the middle of the field, and it is far too late where that other linebacker is able to cut under it. One last insane one from Flores, this time against Jordan Love. Looks chaotic right here. Kind of just bringing everybody all out blitz again. They have no deep safeties, man-to-man coverage, trips to the bottom of the screen, and what do? They drop everybody, basically, and go into a cover 2 man. Those safeties sprint out into those deep halves of the field. They bring 5 that is still able to get home. This honestly isn't really the wrong decision by Jordan Love. He's got this deep out against man coverage like this. It's probably the best place to go, but the pressure gets there just with the confusion and everything else going on. So now there's 100 different counter arguments. CJ Stroud, he's playing against cover 2 more than any quarterback in the NFL, partially because the Texans have such an explosive passing game, that downfield passing, incredible right now. And then CJ Stroud, a younger quarterback, a lot of defenses like playing cover 2 or just disguise 2 high coverages against the younger quarterbacks that usually aren't as good against it. But CJ Stroud, it doesn't mean that he can't pass downfield. Still doing it incredibly well overall. Not really against Brian Flores, but that's for later. Overall, though, there is ways to get explosive pass plays against cover two. It doesn't mean that it's like impossible. You just have to, one, have maybe a more experienced or better quarterback, and two, play calls and play designs. So one of my favorite examples of this, going back to that famous Ohio State-Georgia game, this is CJ Stroud. They are going to play against cover two here, and they have a receiver in the backfield actually. Those outside two receivers are both going to be running outs. The inside receivers are going to be running corners. When you're playing cover two, those two safeties, that's the first thing they see is the vertical on the inside, and they're going inside out to that corner route. What does that open? The middle of the field by a mile. You have this receiver in the backfield now manned up, kind of, against the linebacker. He's going to go right past him. That linebacker keeps on dropping because there's no one else coming, and it's too late. He's wide open down the center of the field for a touchdown. Here's another example. Going back to the Bengals, same thing. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on that outside. Both of them are going vertical against this cover two look. They only have one other receiver in the route concept, and that's Yoshivash in the slot. He is going to cut into the seam right down the center of the field. Right when the snap happens, those safeties, look, turn their hips and go. Immediately out to that quarter or that half of the field against Chase and T. Higgins, afraid of those deep balls against them, leaving Yoshi in the middle of the field. Look where Burrow releases the ball on this. Incredible anticipation and spot. Yes, it is very much an NFL throw and a very hard throw to make, but at the same time, it's a 30-yard completion and it's very doable against cover two. So going back to the original, the soft coverage, how much is it affecting everything? Just going through every argument, some of it backs up, but a lot of it doesn't. So some of the things that support it in terms of the soft coverage and how everything is looking. Just looking at the stats, average depth of target, or ADOT, is the lowest it has ever been since being tracked. Just the air yards, it says a ton of checkdowns and a ton of short routes. Also, it is the lowest blitzes have ever been. So same thing, just more conservative play, less blitzing around the NFL in general. Rushing, kind of mixed in with that. Two-eye safety looks a lot more, then you run the ball more. Higher than it's been in forever, at least like the early 2000s, I think it was 2008. More running than ever. It's all just a pendulum. It's going to swing back and forth as defenses change, offenses will change, and then back and forth and back and forth. The other thing, it's the slowest pace since the early 2000s, so just less plays in general. Part of that is the conservatism, just disguises everything, takes slower. It's not as much no huddle, go, go, go. We know what the defense is doing. And then another one I kind of like the idea of is because of that conservative, more soft coverage, those underneath plays, you are getting more receptions in general, less big plays, longer plays, and more tackled receivers, especially in the middle of the field. Receivers, it's a lot more middle of the field routes. They're catching, running. It's a lot more yak-based game. And with that, what happens? Receivers get tackled and injured more. So when they're getting tackled, say 20 to 30% more, the injuries go up by 20 or 30%. That's a big gap. Don't know how much that is actually backed up, but I like the idea of it. Also, just a ton of counter arguments or other ideas to think about. The number one by far is just the frequency. It's overblown is what it is. So one eye has always been the majority. You stop the run, you get more pressure, you're a defense, you're not going to play overly conservative. So now people talk about too high, oh, it's dominating. You would think people are running too high about 75% of the time based on perception or what people are talking about. No, it's still a majority single high, about a 60-40 split favoring single high coverage. You're only getting, the Vikings, number one in the league, are still only 27% cover two. So when we're talking about that conservative soft coverage, yes, there's more of it. And yes, when you're getting third and long or those type of situations, we see a lot more of it. But in general, you can't blame too much on the rise of that sort of coverage, especially when we're looking at two eyes that aren't as conservative. We talked about cover four. You can still get explosive plays. You see cover four, run play action in a post. If you execute it, you're going to have an explosive play. It is very doable. So it's still only about 20% of plays against cover two this season. 60% of plays are against one high coverages. So I think it's a little overblown there. Probably the biggest for me though in general is just impatience. That is, over the last 5 years, been the theme. And there's different areas of this. One is just we have an impatient society. We look at quarterback and offensive coordinator. Is it bleeding over to that? So, trivia question. How many quarterbacks and OC pairings are in their third year together? Quarterback and OC pairings. 3 seasons together. There's two. Two. Technically 3, but OC for Trevor Lawrence wasn't the play caller. So when we're talking play caller, it's 2. But it's Trevor Lawrence, who now, just as a play caller, 0-4, because it kind of doesn't really count. Dolphins, they were amazing first week and a half, and then their quarterback got injured. And then the third one is the Lions. Jared Goff, right around his career average. Overall, they're playing great. That is it. It's literally the Dolphins and Lions that have the same play caller and quarterback for 3 straight years in a row now. Everybody else is different. It's a new OC every single year if they're not scoring 30 points a game. It's a new quarterback every other year if they're not dominating right away. And part of that, I think, comes from what I would say is the big 4 in starting off hot when we went to a stretch. For a long time, there wasn't really many good quarterback prospects. Like 2014, infamous. Like it was after Luck, Cam Newton, and there was a big gap. And then we got to some really good quarterbacks all in a row. And a lot of them dominated right away to an extent. So we got one, Mahomes. He sat out for the entire first year. That's part of it. Then comes in, throws 50 touchdowns. Then we got Lamar. Very similar. Kind of didn't really play his first year. And then came in and dominated. And then we had Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. All within like a 3-4 year span. Joe Burrow got increasingly better throughout the first half of the season, then got injured. Second year, comes back, wins comeback player of the year, and takes his team to the Super Bowl. Justin Herbert, one of the best rookie seasons of all time. I think like 3rd best statistically in terms of fantasy that season as a rookie. 3rd best. So everyone's seeing like, oh, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, these are all dominating the first year that they're starting. They're all incredible. Our quarterback doesn't do that. We're going to cut him, trade him, do whatever. And what do we see as a theme is now all of these quarterbacks that happened to, that slow start recent quarterback success. So many of the good quarterbacks right now, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Jordan Love, Jared Goff, all patience 5 years later, they're all doing really good. There was an ESPN conversation yesterday that I saw a clip of, and I just didn't think about it first, but they were talking about the best quarterback in the NFC, and if it was Jaden Daniels. And I was like, best quarterback in the NFC? And then you think about it, well, you got Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, all in the AFC. NFC, do you know who they kind of decided as the consensus top 2? It was Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. Both guys, 2 years ago, were ostracized from the NFL as starting guys, both seen as absolute trash. And now they're the 2 best quarterbacks in the NFC. And the other guys, they were saying, like the 3rd guy that they said were tied, it was Brock Purdy, Geno Smith, and Jaden Daniels. If you told somebody 2 seasons ago, that was going to be the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFC, they wouldn't believe that a single one of them would be that. Because we look at Baker and Sam Darnold 2 years ago, even Jaden Daniels was at Arizona State. He was not a very good passer there at all. Brock Purdy, last pick in the draft. Geno Smith was going to be the backup to Drew Lock is what everyone thought. And now those are the guys that are the top 5 in the NFC. And a lot of it is just that experience and growth. So we live in an impatient society where a lot of these guys, if they're not dominating right away, they're going to be thrown aside. I would be terrified if Josh Allen went to a different organization in 2024 as a rookie and had the same rookie season he had. What would happen from there? And going into that, everyone is kind of ceiling hunting for that same reason of Josh Allen. And just clarifying, I'm not against this at all. It is, to me, kind of the smart move, but you kind of have to deal with the pain of that too. So it's kind of how Drake May is seen right now. Didn't play too many years in college, just 2 years of starting. And Anthony Richardson, same thing, has like 10 starts since high school. But comparing 2 guys, Anthony Richardson and Brock Purdy. Anthony Richardson drafted top 5. He has not looked good. And there is everything that you could ever imagine athletically that is there. It's just everything else is kind of shaky. How long do they stay with that and work with it to see if it works out in the long term? Because Brock Purdy, on the other hand, he was the very last pick in the draft. I don't know how many people would remember this, but as like a sophomore, junior, Brock Purdy, when he was like getting close or actually draft eligible, people were like mocking him day two with a chance of being a round one pick. Like he had talent and stuff that was there that people loved in NFL circles. And then his last year, instead of dominating and moving up to the first round, he was kind of like really bad and then dropped to the last pick of the draft. But it's a lot of those intangibles, a lot of the things that you just don't see with the naked eye or how they look in terms of being a good quarterback. There's just so much to it. So that was a lot of it is that ceiling hunting, go for the best athlete possible, go for the biggest arm possible, and then from there, we'll figure it out. If they don't work out in a year and a half, we'll try again. So a good example of this that I like to look at is Will Levis. So Mahomes, when Mahomes came out, everyone kind of saw him that way, that physical specimen in terms of his arm strength and what he was doing on the field, the off-balance throws. It was all unorthodox. That's why people loved him. But the thing with Mahomes is he had everything else. He was criticized for playing in a Big 12 that allowed 60 points a game, and his team was 6-6 somehow, even though he put up 6 touchdowns and 500 passing yards every week. But he had the other stuff to go with it, and then sat out for a year learning on Alex Smith and was great. But the college production was there. The problem that I have with a lot of this is the ceiling hunting for the guys that do not have a mix of both. And Will Levis is the example for me for that. He could work out long term, but just looking at it, he wasn't an early declare. So he's that raw talent, but wasn't an early declare. He transferred, not for a reason like Jaden Daniels, where Daniels was at Arizona State. He was good there. He was clearly going to be the starting quarterback again, but he's transferred to LSU for a better opportunity, new scene, everything like that. Will Levis transferred because he couldn't beat out Sean Clifford. That's different. That's not good. So he goes to Kentucky, and he wasn't good there. So then you have the ceiling, you have the talent, the arm strength. The arm strength is beautiful, but it's one of those things where, okay, he wasn't an early declare. He's got like the raw tools, but he was never good in college, and there's problems everywhere, basically. So Josh Allen was at least like, yeah, he had his problems, but in college he was still like a good quarterback. Levis at Kentucky still struggled mightily, even though everyone saw him as that second first round talent in the NFL. That's how people were talking about him. And then he'd go out and throw for 150 yards against like the bottom level SEC teams as a fourth year guy who couldn't beat out Sean Clifford. So that's where I have the problems with the ceiling hunting, is when you do that and there's not a mix of the other stuff that you're looking for. And there's a couple other reasons that I point out, like the rise of 7-on-7, other things like that, of being impatient, is throwing quarterbacks into the fire, not many starts in college, all that. But another thing I want to bring up, again, I like talking about it a lot, but it's my favorite quarterback stat in terms of draft analysis and all that sort of stuff. And wait, why is this quarterback not doing good? And that's pressure to sack ratio. Sacks kill drives. It's the second worst thing a quarterback can do outside of throwing interceptions. So we look at the 2023 pressure to sack ratio. Here is the bottom 10 in the NFL. Daniel Jones, DeVito, Bailey Zappi, Bryce Young, Will Levis, Wilson, Howell, Watson, Fields, and Ritter. What do we notice? Yes, Deshaun Watson's there and Daniel Jones are there. They might just not be good at football. But the other 8, they're extremely young. They are extremely young. They don't have as much experience, and they have a lot more problems when it comes to the pocket presence, avoiding sacks, getting the ball out, timing, rhythm, everything like that. That takes what? Experience. Now we go to the top. Look at who it is. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Flacco, Geno Smith, Hurts, Goff, Herbert, Cousins, Purdy, and Love. All experienced quarterbacks, and then Brock Purdy, who is dominant in it out of college, and then Jordan Love, who sat behind all those years learning and has a little more experience and is now in his second year starting at least. Those are the top 10. The experience matters. And I looked so hard to try to find this dude's account again. I couldn't, so I don't have the exact numbers or his tag, but it was some Miami Dolphin guy on TikTok that did the math on EPA per play against cover 2 for experienced guys and not experienced guys. Guys that had 3 or less years of experience or were in year 3 or less were struggling in the negative, really bad. Outside of that, 3 years of experience or more, those guys well in the positive, doing completely fine. And it makes complete sense. A great example of that, four guys that I've talked about, it works perfectly going back to the Vikings defense. It's overly complex where experience helps. Those four guys, Daniel Jones, Brock Purdy, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love. Who is the best? Still wasn't his best, but the guy with the best experience, Jordan Love. QBR and adjusted net yards per attempt. Basically, your passing yards per play minus sacks. So Jordan Love is the best, then it was Brock Purdy, and the worst was CJ Stroud right at the beginning of his second year playing against a bunch of cover two, this complex defense. The Vikings defense kind of put everybody in hell, but a lot of these guys are the younger guys. I'm really interested to see them against Aaron Rodgers this weekend. I had the stat earlier, but basically, Aaron Rodgers this season, to back up what that one guy was doing in fantasy terms, he's the quarterback 17 right now. But against cover 2 this year, he's the quarterback 2. If you guys like this video, like and subscribe. Maybe share it to a friend or two since it's not actually fantasy advice, but I enjoyed doing it. Hope you guys liked it.